members of the council. It's my honor tonight to introduce Nils Peterson, the chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Good evening, Nils.
And what do I do to advance it? Just the arrows there. Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm here to report on the work of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and you have at least one council member who can keep me honest, having participated in most of it for the past year. Our current membership, including, thank you, the addition of Rob Parrish, the bottom of the list, as our newest member. We were delighted to welcome him to our last meeting. So projects that we've worked on in 2014, expanded residential use allowances in neighborhood business, general business, motor business, and industrial zoning districts. This was an outcome of the council's request to explore extending the extension of the perception of downtown Moscow north up Main Street. One of the several attributes that we found might contribute was what we see represented here, specifically in Anytime Fitness, when that was a restaurant at one story and then they chose to change it to Anytime Fitness and add a second story that was residential. They had to go through a PUD process. And it's produced an interesting structure. It confronts the street in ways that one might hope in a more urban downtown setting, but it was a lot of hurdle for them to overcome. And so this expanded allowance of residential would have made it possible for them to do what they did by right rather than by PUD. And hopefully we will see other expansions take advantage of this in similar settings. This is another piece of work that was an outgrowth of the request to explore the North Main Street section from A up to E. A recognition that the nature of the setback requirements may cause new buildings to be built setback further from the street front and therefore interrupting the sort of sense that we have in the classic part of Main Street, let's say 3rd to 6th, of the buildings coming right up to the sidewalk. And so what it was is it's created an alternative mechanism for determining what the front yard setback should be, allowing one to average along the block of the various structures that were there. So again, an outgrowth of the council's request that I think will make for some interesting changes over time on the development of not only North Main Street, but in some other sections where we have relatively small motor business development like that. Tandem parking modified the requirements on multifamily parking so that you could count what we see that car doing there as being in one stall and the garage that it's blocking as being a second stall, both associated with the unit. The outcome is we hope more compact use of land, because rather than requiring two separate stalls, each with direct access to the street, one stall can be in line with the other one in tandem. I don't know if we've seen any constructions taken advantage of this opportunity yet, but it was requested by a couple of apartment developers. This was one of the more controversial things that we worked on. The city had a number of lots that already existed, some back all the way into the 20s, that had frontages on different kinds of alternative streets, shall we say. They weren't classed by the city as streets. In this case, it's Hidden Lane that you're looking at, and the 4 properties that are boxed are infronting Hidden Lane, which is less than the current city standards for a street. And you can see the rightmost one actually gets its access to Hidden Lane across another piece of property. So the city had a series of these that were built out and a couple that were not yet developed. And the question that we worked on and resolved is that had these structures been substantially damaged, they would not have been allowed to rebuild in the configurations that they were in. So this adjustment to the lots of record allowed those pre-existing ones, but not future ones, to continue to exist the way they were and to be financeable by banks and to continue to operate. Another sort of cleanup piece of work was the fence amendment. The way the ordinances had changed over the last 20-plus years, fences that people had built that were fairly close to the street on their side yard could not be rebuilt where they were. And this was a hardship for owners of corner lots because the front yard setback was taking up and could not be fenced in a privacy sort of way, and the side yard setback was taking up some of their land, leaving them only a potentially small corner in the back of their lot, the interior corner of their lot, to have the private backyard space and the barbecue and whatnot. So the amendment just allowed the 6-foot privacy fence to be brought closer to the side street. Currently, we're working on several projects, which we hope to be bringing to you shortly. Some expansion of where light manufacturing can happen in motor business areas. Again, it's been a burden to businesses in town. Biketronics would be an example. Their location, when you remember, they were out on Almond beyond Rose Hours. They needed a conditional use permit, and then when they moved down to Palouse River Drive, south of town, they needed another conditional use permit to do assembly and manufacture of parts indoors in ways that are not troubling, it would seem, to the neighborhoods that they were in. So we're working on an amendment that would make it easier for those sorts of things to happen. Accessory dwelling units is a very important project that we've been working on for quite a while. The comprehensive plan directs us to explore mechanisms for allowing the creation of an accessory dwelling unit. And these are often called mother-in-law apartment. And we know that a number of them already exist as basement apartments in houses or whatever. But we also know from citizen surveys that there's a demand for the ability to have this additional capability on your property as a small accessory unit. What's important, and I hope that the audience tonight is listening, is, I'm going to look at Mike, it will be March 11? Correct. Public hearing on March 11. And I really would like to encourage people to turn out. This is one of those things that spans every residential zone in the city. And so a broad representation would be appealing to the commission in terms of understanding public sentiment on the issue. We've done citizen surveys, but this is sort of a chance to come and say your piece to the commission on March 11. Temporary uses is another piece that P&Z was directed to look into. These are things like sunglasses stands, fireworks stands, fruit stands that appear and disappear at various places. And the concern is that sometimes they've happened, you can think of the ones that have happened, say, in Rose Hours parking lot or over at the appliance place.
Howard Hughes.
Howard Hughes, thank you. In well-developed parking lots, and everybody kind of knows how to get in and get out. But then there have been some that have appeared on undeveloped lots. And it's been unclear how to enter, it's been unclear how to park, it's been unclear how to exit safely. And so the concern is to just try to help minimize those safety hazards that come from having these kind of temporary uses happen in ad hoc locations. And then outdoor uses is an exploration of the ability to have more kinds of, in the summer weather, when it's nice, a restaurant to have outdoor seating or other kinds of outdoor commercial activities. Then I wanted to mention another of the pieces of work that we tried as an experiment last year, and the commissioners indicated that they would like to continue. We have been doing a set of what we've called shared readings. It's an opportunity for professional learning amongst the commission. Every 2 to 3 meetings, staff serves as our editor and selects a couple of items to read, and we announce it, and then at a subsequent meeting, we put it on the agenda and offer an opportunity for commissioners to discuss it. I've heard from members of the public that they're reading some of these readings. I've heard from members of the public that they would like to suggest a reading. So I think it's an interesting idea that it's reached out. We used to read a professional journal. It was a print document. Art will remember it.
It was pretty good.
It was pretty good, and it was one article a quarter that I found really interesting, and then that operation went defunct, and then we had sort of no professional learning. So this is an attempt to recreate some of that professional learning opportunity. And then we have some upcoming projects as well. The zoning code use table, oh, Mike, you're going to have to help me out here. I always come up with these long names for things. Yes. So right now, this is part of the long-range goal that the council has had for revising the whole zoning document. And staff was charged with doing it rather than a consultant, and so staff has been doing piecewise steps, and the next step here that is to bring, so right now a lot of things are scattered in each section, and the idea is to bring all of, in this case, the uses into one table, and then everywhere just refer to the allowable table rather than, because it makes maintenance over time easier than amending everywhere in the document. Parking regulations for Legacy Crossing came up out of the recent effort that the council started with the Urban Renewal Agency to find a proposal to develop the corner 6 and Jackson. And in reviewing proposals, city staff determined that there were some conflicts between the parking regulations in the zoning code and the parking regulations in the Legacy Crossing overlay. So this is a cleanup of conflicts between two pieces of our own documentation. Subdivision code, I think, Art, you will remember that came before us, again, sort of working on another piece of the minutia of the zoning code and straightening out and getting ready for the new zoning code that we hope to be creating. And administrative variances is an idea that there are sometimes that there's something that comes to the planning staff that is a relatively straightforward, relatively clear, but needs a tweak, needs an exception made, and it's an exploration to see if we can find some ways to allow staff to do some of those things without requiring conditional use permit or a variance or other more expensive mechanisms. So again, it's trying to make the city just a little bit more flexible and responsive to the desires of the citizenry. Questions?
Questions for Nils? Jim, you were the most recent person on P&Z. You got anything you want to put out here, throw out in there?
I'd say you covered it pretty well, pretty thorough there, Nils.
Thank you, Jim.
It's nice to know things are moving on.
Moving on.
Sounds like a good report, Nils. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.